Hi everyone, it's me, and for this video is about sound in film. So this video I'm going to be discussing the history of sound and how it came to be and how I mean and the importance of its use in films. What is sound and its early use? So sound is synchronized with motion picture. Sounds technologically coupled with moving images opposite to a silent film. So before sound existed, there were silent films. So the first known public exhibition that produced sound in films was happened in 1900 in Paris, but decades have passed before sound in motion pictures became commercially successful. I think they were struggling to synchronize the sound because of what the sound on discs that they were using at the time, and the quality of it was deemed to be inadequate. So basically, it was not up to standards. They tried to develop it, but it wasn't really yielding the results. So they had to do something to improve the way things are. I think they had to get new technology was released to make things more improved. So innovations in sound and on film led to the first commercial screening of short motion pictures using the technology, which happened in 1923. So basically, they ended up sound was incorporated in short motion pictures before feature films had sound. So the primary steps to commercialize sound were taken between the mid to late 1920s. So, as I said before, only short films were using sound and included synchronized dialogue. So the actors were able to hear their own voices for the first time, which is quite unusual for some actors who were famous during the silent era, which I think their careers didn't translate well to the talkies, some of them. And speaking of talkies, the talking pictures, or talkies, let's say, were made for the first time in the feature film The Jazz Singer. So the film was a major hit and it was made with Vitaphone, which was the leading brand for the sound on disc technology. So basically, I've watched the film before when I was in university my first year, but unfortunately, I don't really like the film. I didn't really like it that much, so yeah, I didn't really like the film as much. So was it's not as much. So I didn't really like it. It wasn't for me really. It was part singing, part talking, but less. It's more of a silent film in some retrospect, but it had dialogue, which is good. No, it is the Warner Brothers made this film. I think they knew the technology. It's by two brothers who founded the studio. So basically, I think they had other competitors like MGM and Paramount, but MGM was the most pop, was the best of all the top studios in Hollywood because there was a time called there's a period called the studio system, which most of the studios were competing to buy and make money through actors and films. Some of them were doing illegal practices as well, which is not good. But I'm not going to get into that. I think they Warner Brothers knew their technology existed. Even I think Paramount, they thought it was. I think the head of Paramount, one of the bosses, executive producers at MGM thought it never existed, and he thought there was no such thing. They were the most successful studio at the time. And then Warner Brothers came up. They knew the technology existed, they just had to prove it through developments and many things like that. So sound on film would soon became would soon become the standard for talking pictures. So nowadays we have films with sound in them. So actors do not need to exaggerate their emotions. Sound. So in the 1930s, it became a global phenomenon. So it grew in Hollywood and American cinema, but to a lesser degree in European cinema. I've always noticed that the Europeans don't like to innovate, and they're quite skeptical about certain inventions and breakthroughs, technologies and stuff. I don't know if it's me or it's that, or it's just that they just don't like to get too ahead of themselves. So in Japan, a similar method happened, but it was a slow rise popular becoming popular with the audience, and consequently in India, the sound was a transformative element to the rapid expansion to the nation's film industry. So basically, India, Bollywood films were popular because of sound. That's the reason for it. Because they do a lot of musicals or romantics. It's more about dancing and singing and, acting in Bollywood films. So that's the reason why sound became successful in Bollywood. And the first image is the gramophone. I think that's what it's called. And this guy is playing the violin through it. It's a bit like a sound recorder, but it's quite big. And the second picture here is the man who invented sound with motion picture. But he's known as the Finland's Thomas Edison. I can't remember his name because I did this presentation, but I completely forgot his name. So as soon as I realized I had to make this video, but I think he's at Finland's Thomas Edison. But I do dispute some of the claims that Edison did invent certain things, such as electricity, light bulb. I think it was an African American person that discovered it first, but I think Edison ended up taking the credit for it. I think people just made him saying that he invented these things. He didn't really invent these things, really. But I think one thing he did invent, I think it was the camera. I can't remember what it is, but I think it's like a camera or something. And the third picture here, in the middle of, is the poster for the chromographone from the famous film studio called Gaumont, which was a famous was a popular film studio in France, and lots of French films were made there. And the fourth one is the one I mentioned, the Warner Brothers first studio to ever make a feature film with sound included. I didn't really like the film that much, I would have to be honest. It wasn't really my type of film. It's just purely because I didn't really like it. I don't really have a good enough reason. It wasn't. I didn't really fancy it, and there was the use of blackface, which I don't like as well. So the importance of sound. Sound is important in The quality of sound is important in filmmaking and video games. So without it, there will be nothing if you don't have a good sound. And you can't mess up on the audio. There's no excuse for that. Because you can get away with having shaky camera work, but with sound, it's just, you cannot. You just can't muck it up. I've been on the film set, but I do think both elements are important: sound and motion picture, image, moving image, to get it right. You have to get it right because it's important that the film looks good and is presentable. I did direct a film. I hate to admit it, but I did direct a film where the film footage wasn't that great. It was in my first year in university, but I'm in my last year now, so I hope to improve on my mistakes. And it wasn't that good, basically. I felt really upset about it, but it happens, it's life. But I'm learning to improve, so I have to improve. It's part of life. And making the medium successful, but more sound makes the medium more successful. But most of all, it makes it more memorable. So having good sound, a soundtrack that's memorable, or if someone remembers a dialogue, something that a character said in the film, makes it more memorable. Sound is very important because that's how people remember stuff. Like remember what people said or remember the song, a particular song from a film. You know, and audio can help gain understanding of what the subject, theme, and song is trying to say in terms of its message. And you could tell what the theme is and the subject is straight away with the use of sound. And films are produced using three types of sound: human voices, music, and sound effects. So it makes it more realistic to the audience. So sound and dialogue must perfectly be in sync with the action without any delay whatsoever and must match the sound in terms of sound and how they look. So if they don't quite match up with the action, then the action itself wasn't is not going to be believable really. And one way to achieve believability is to have good high quality sound by using original sound clips rather than relying solely on sound libraries for special effects, for sound effects. So unless it's really necessary, if you need to use sound effects, you just need to keep it real. It's all about real to make the audience not notice the smallest detail. They can't notice there are sound effects. You can't make it that obvious. That's what film is about. You can't make it obvious. And another way to do this is to incorporate what is known as acroneous sound effects, which is also a form of background sounds. That's how you achieve believability. And background sounds don't directly correlate with the action occurring in the scene, but they can bring a film to life. So, including sounds in of a typical city or rural area can help make the film setting more realistic. So, there's the first clip called "The Box," which is a short film. Well, compared to the other film, this film was more has more suspense, and I the sound was there and it made it more clearer, even without the music, what the genre of the film could be. And I didn't really like. I didn't for the other film. I didn't really feel anything. I could sense the action, but I just didn't feel anything. At times, I was confused. I felt like I was gonna guess what genre it is, but I don't know. I would have been guessing what the genre is with the other one because I didn't really feel anything because it had no sound to it. I didn't have any sound is meant to make you feel something. I think that's what this film tried to do. I think you should watch this if you haven't seen this. I think this is a good short film. I've seen this before. It's a really good film, so it's one of my favourite short films, I would say. So here, I'm just going to quickly go through this. So this is the speed recorder. This is the box where you can play, record or playback accuracy. It's a bit like the Tuscan recorder, and there's a directional microphone, which is displayed on this pole here. It's basically like a boom mic type thing. And it's all connected in the camera. You just cable connected to the camera. Everything's all connected here. These two are cameras or Tuscan recorders, I think. Yeah, I think there's the brand name on it. And there's the microphone in the middle here. The skinny thing here is the shotgun, and you can connect it on this thing. It's a bit like a boom fluff mic or something. But you just connect. You can take it off. You don't have to keep it on. And this is something called hot sound or warm sound. I can't. I always get them confused. And this basically the lavalier mics, which you have to connect. You have to insert it inside your shirt and clip it on top of it. The wires shouldn't be seen. They use it in present and stuff. And this is how the whole thing with the boom and this boom box and there's the cable extension cable and it's all connected to this. You don't need that talking thing, but there is talking unless they're communicating with each other. The sound mixer and the sound boom operator are communicating with each other to see if the sound's good. And dubbing is a sound post production process used in filmmaking and video production to add supplementary recordings to lip sync the original dialogue from the sound from the production to create a soundtrack. So it's not necessarily what you in restarting. People think it's like revoicing or redoing a script. In a way, it is, but that's called, and outside of film industry, is commonly known as replacing actors' voices with um, translated version of the script. And the process normally takes place in the dub stage, and sound editors prepare and edit the film, the necessary, all the necessary tracks for the sound, like dialogue, automated dialogue, ADR, sound effects, Foley music, and all the other bits that go with it. And this proceeds to balance all the elements and record the finished soundtrack. And as I said at the outside, the term dubbing is commonly referred to replacing the actor's voice, but with those performers translating, speaking in their language, and it's in the film industry is known as revoicing. And I have an example of dubbing video.
Your names are so long-winded. It's a miracle you ever get to fighting at all.
C'est amusant, monsieur.
Non, au contraire. C'est tragique.
Avez-vous réponse à ça?
Absolument.
夕飯を作って髪もちゃんと
Wo sind Sie?
Was?
Mit einigen der bekanntesten und kriminellsten Familien in dieser Stadt in Verbindung bringt und du lässt sie in einen Bus steigen.
Peut-être que c'était un de ces lève-tôt qui font leur bagage le matin. Même peut-être qu'ils n'avaient pas d'amis.
出てetwas braucht 寂しいよちょっと何かいるものがあったら
So this is basically called AI. So this is basically a program. I don't know much about this program that they were using, but I think there's ways of dubbing voices instead of redoing things again. But you have to redo it, but you don't need to. You just do the actors. You just recreate through computer. I think they have a program and they just copy the faces onto this special software, and it makes the voices them speak in a different voice. The speaker applies their voice to the character. And I think I watched this documentary about deep fakes, datism, dataism. I don't know what's it called exactly, but I know my teacher showed it to us, lecturer showed it to us during the lesson, and we were talking about how it's done. It's called deep fakes, and I think it was an interesting documentary considering I've never seen a deep fake. I've heard of it before. And AI is now becoming a thing. I think they're trying to innovate it more. And in Foley is reproduction of creating everyday sound effects in films to make it sound more real. So it's added to videos and other media in post-production to enhance audio quality. So it's basically reproducing everyday sounds using everyday items that you can recreate with it. It just makes it sound more realistic and authentic. It's just you don't know how it makes it sound more realistic to what the action is on screen. So this post-production role was named after the sound effects artist Jack Foley. And everyday sounds can be made by anything from the swishing of clothing and footsteps to squeaky doors and breaking glass. So you can create these sounds in the comfort of your own home. You don't need to search that far just to find equipment to create the sound that you want. So Foley sounds are used to enhance the auditory experience of the movie and they cover up unwanted sounds that's captured on set during filming. So any unnecessary sounds, Foley can be the use for it, can be the solution for it. And it makes it sound more real. Again, as I just said. So any sound that's not necessary for the plot, Foley covers it up more or less. And places where Foley process takes place are often referred to as the Foley stage or Foley studio. So Foley artists recreate the realistic ambient sounds that the film portrays. So that sounds like a fun job if you're into Foley or sound creation or into sound in general. If that's your thing or your career, or if you're already doing that, then what do you enjoy it or don't you enjoy it? And the props and sets of a film do not often react in the same way acoustically as they do in real life. So it requires the filmmaker to foley the sounds themselves. So they have to do it themselves because it wouldn't work really to recreate the sound. You can't just. Some people use sound effects, but it doesn't sound real if you use it, unless you have a really particular reason for it. I've never done Foley in my life. I want to do it. I might do it at some point, I'm not sure. But I've never done it, but I really want to. It sounds interesting. And people were telling me how fun it is to do Foley. My friend, she told me about when she was in college, at her college, she did Foley, a Foley workshop, which was quite great. It was awesome. And she said it was fun. So I have an example of Foley sounds. So that's it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you like this video, like, share, and subscribe if you want to get many more videos such as this. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.